Hey guys, so I thought I'd show you my VHS collection. And it's very special to me. Back in the day stuff. So from my childhood to yours. Um, yeah, so I guess we'll go row by row. And I'll tell you what each film means to me, and let me know how you feel about it in the comments if you want to see more of this kind of stuff. So, got our first movie. By the way, all the movies on the first shelf are my absolute favorites from the 90s and early 2000s. That's why it's at the top. Um, these are the most special, I think. So we got Pokemon, the first movie. It's to be in the theater as a kid in the 90s to see this movie. All of us 90s kids will remember that forever. And the whole mystery of Mew and Mewtwo was a big deal, and I just love this cover. Yeah, amazing. Got some video stuff on there. Look at that. Blockbuster Video. Making this more of an ancient artifact than it already is. And of course, you see that it's sealed. It's probably not that special that it's sealed, but I don't want to open it, you know. Just keep it sealed. Because it's special. This is the hype of Pokemania, where it was the biggest in 1999 when this film was released. So everybody at school was talking about this. The trailers hyped us up. The promos hyped us up. All the stuff in Kids WB hyped us up for this. This is it's like a window in time, this kind of film. And it's one of the best of Pokemon. It's and for those who didn't grow up with Pokemon in the 90s, looking at this film is seeing how it was for us and how big it was when this came out, when you see this film. So, that's the first movie. Second, we got Pokemon 2000. Oh my god. Now, I love the cover for the first Pokemon movie, or Pokemon the first movie, I should say. But look at how phenomenal this cover is. It's like Pokemon was taking over the world. I always loved this cover when I was a kid. I would just look at it, you know, all the silhouettes of all the Pokemon. Just fucking awesome. The power of one. And I loved Lugia. I saw this also in the movie theaters. Another movie that was a big deal. Another reason why this movie was a big deal was just they were starting to introduce the second generation slowly when this movie came out. So it was really the first time that you got to realize that, the Pokemon world is even bigger than we once thought it was. Like, way bigger. So big that you didn't think it would get that big. We were all amazed that there was 150 Pokemon, but now there's 100 more. And what I have to say about the generations is that, in my opinion, I know this is this fucking cliche, but the first two generations I think are the best. I think they had the most memorable Pokemon. 3 and 4, Generation 3 and 4 were... I like 3, but 4 is like the last, in my opinion, of like the good generations. The first 2 are the best, though. Like, once it got to Generation 4, it started to get a little stale, in my opinion. Yeah. And the title itself is very iconic. Y2K was happening. For you young kids, I don't even know if you know about Y2K, but everything was 2000 in 1999 near the end there. All right. Casper. This is one of those films that is now forgotten. I wouldn't say forgotten completely, but no one really talks about this film anymore. I don't know why. Um, this movie is like great. It's amazing. Visually, it's extremely iconic. You know, if you're a 90s kid watching this, and if you haven't rewatched this in 20 years like me, because I only recently rewatched it last year, rewatch this movie. Your nostalgia will be up through the roof. Rewatch this movie. This is a fucking great movie. It brings back so many memories. Casper and the Ghost looks so good in this movie. The animation and everything. I remember it like blew people's minds away at the time. And the thing is, I love the Casper sequels also. Casper Meets Wendy I loved, and the third movie, and I forget the name of the third movie, with the green ghost as the villain. And you noticed that the animation in the Casper movies just got worse as they went on. Like the first one has the best animation, then 2 and 3 it's like second best, and they still look good. But in the fourth one, I think it was a Halloween movie or something. The fourth one was like, the animation was lacking. I remember they had a new Casper cartoon on TV also in the 90s, which wasn't as good as the movies. And by the way, when I was a kid, because I've always been a cartoon aficionado, but when I was a kid, I had no idea that Casper was a cartoon character from the 1960s. And he had his own show back then and everything. When I was a kid, I just thought Casper came from this movie. It wasn't until I was like in my late teens that I figured out that Casper is actually a cartoon in the 60s. And that in the 90s, this was them like bringing him back. So Casper used to be a franchise in the 90s. They did a lot with Casper. And I don't know. They just stopped and no one talks about it anymore. We'll get to other movies and stuff that people don't talk about anymore. But amazing movie. One of the best movies of the 90s. Yeah. Pretty incredible. So I guess you can say that Casper is a ghost now. He's a ghost of these days because nobody talks about him anymore. Really, he really was a ghost. So, you all know what this is, The Iron Giant. It's a really great movie. One of the best. I gotta say that this is when Warner Brothers was really like having that big competition with Disney. And Warner Brothers made the best cartoon movies more than any other company other than Disney. And they were really trying to give them a run for their money. Space Jam, of course, was their best attempt yet. And there should have been some kind of sequel for that back in the day, other than Back in Action, but that Back in Action is also great. But yeah, I love The Iron Giant. This movie is really great. And I did like seeing him in that Ready Player One movie, even though that movie was crap. I didn't like it, but I did like seeing him in it. But I hated the fact that he died. And it was like the same thing they did in the original movie when he died, like a sacrifice, and he gave his thumbs up before he died. And it's like, why does he have to die? We haven't seen him for like fucking 20 years and he's fucking dead already. Like in the same movie. Seriously? And I mean, there should have been an Iron Giant 2 back in the day. Now, a lot of people talk about how they didn't really promote this movie that much, and that's true. That's true. That's their fault. But people say this movie's underrated. And I wouldn't say that. It's not underrated. People talk about it. People still remember it. People talk about this movie a lot. So, and people really loved it back in the day who saw it, like me. So it's not underrated, but yeah, good old Iron Giant. So, one of the greatest movies of the 1990s, the Rugrats movie. Oh my god. This movie was phenomenal. One of the greatest movies ever, I think, in my opinion. And the cat dog cartoon at the very beginning was really great also. It was short, but it had the best animation for cat dog ever. And this was actually the year that cat dog debuted in 1998. Um, the whole thing with the Reptar wagon and Dill. Um, when you really look at Dill, Dill really is not as memorable and as likable as the original Rugrats, including Susie. The same can be said for Kimmy. But they're still pretty good characters, but they're so severely lacking in more charm that they could have had. Especially Kimmy. But we'll get into Kimmy. But yeah, really great movie. Even the sides, like you couldn't do this on a DVD. Like the spines, all the pictures. I mean, this movie was like an event. I mean, Tommy was getting a brother. Everybody watched the Rugrats. Apologies to you if you didn't watch the Rugrats. It was like a big deal. And the animation in this movie is amazing. And visually, it's a darker toned Rugrats movie near the end. The whole thing with the wolf and everything. And the music in this is fucking great. Got the orange because it's a Nickelodeon film. I believe this is the first Nickelodeon movie. Makes sense. Rugrats was their biggest show. And yes, it's bigger and better than SpongeBob. Enough with that. I mean, I heard this argument that, oh, SpongeBob is like the biggest cartoon Nickelodeon ever made. Well, that's not true. It just became that way because they kept airing it and they ignored all the other cartoons eventually. That isn't the reason why. And the only reason they did that was because I don't know. Well, I have a reason why, but we'll get into that at a different time. Cats Don't Dance. This is a really great movie for those who remember it. It is a great movie. Warner Brothers was one of the best. This is another film that I think more people talk about this than Casper, I think. It's got really great music as well. Really great catchy music. This came out in 1997, I believe, a year after Space Jam, so this was the second best Warner Brothers feature, aside from Iron Giant and Space Jam. I mean, you could really call it a trilogy. The Warner Brothers best 90s cartoon movie trilogy. Space Jam, Cats Don't Dance, and Iron Giant. Yeah, and this movie was really... It was inspiring at the beginning, and it made you want to be a star and go to Hollywood and all that. But then the film does show you the darkness of Hollywood. So it tells you the truth, even though it builds you up at the beginning and it tears you down, and then it builds you up at the end. The end of the movie is kind of like my life or other people's lives, where it's just like, well, you're not going to make it in Hollywood, but you can still sing and dance. You're still a star. Even if the studios are evil and corrupt and the town is very smutty and everything. This is just one of those movies that, another movie that should have gotten a sequel. And yeah, how could you not love this movie? Next movie, The Pagemaster. One of Macaulay Culkin's best. I would say his second best. For some reason, people just only talk about Home Alone, which is really annoying. But this movie is really great. Christopher Lloyd was great in it too. The books were hilarious. Animation was great. And by the way, tell me if any of you were scared of this in the comments. The the scene, it's near the beginning of the movie where he's in the library and he comes out from the rain. He's in the library all by himself and the rainbow is chasing him. Holy shit. That terrified the shit out of me when I was a kid. That was fucking scary when I was a kid. Tell me if any of you were scared by that when you were a kid in the comments. There he is. That's like that scene where he comes into the library with the rain. Yeah. Now, doesn't she remind you of Wanda from the Fairly Odd Parents? You know, and she had the wand in the movie and stuff. So, this is another great movie. It's probably 20th Century Fox's best attempt at a cartoon movie. Yeah, so it had great music, great visuals, and the books were really funny, especially him, and horror. Um, it's fucking classic. And just thinking about how we could have got a Pagemaster too and whatever. Good stuff. Look at that dragon. Now you can tell this dragon is a painting. Back in the day, they used to make paintings. Look at that sword. They used to make paintings for movie posters. It's never done anymore. Even if the movie was a piece of shit, the posters looked amazing. And with the really, really old movies, like from the 50s and 60s, some of those were bad movies, but the posters were better than the movies. But not later on. Later on, movies got better, and it's like they knew if they were going to have paintings for the posters, they knew they had to make a great movie. So it was like the build-up. It was like pressure to make a great film. And sometimes in life, a little bit of pressure is okay. Just a little bit. A little bit. Come on, get in there, damn it. All right, we all know this one. Space Jam. So, a little bit of history. Space Jam is my favorite movie of all time. And I think that it gets a bad rap these days by a lot of people who are overly cynical. This is an amazing movie. I think it's a really great movie. It's got funny, it's got comedy, romance, action, animation. It's got social commentary. It's very well done. It just ups the ante on everything. On visually, what the Looney Tunes look like. Yeah, this is a great movie, and people say, "Oh, it's a commercial disguised as a movie." But, you know, there's so much more going on in this movie than what you see in a commercial that it makes this really a film, not just a commercial, in my opinion. And they totally wanted to do that when they made it also. Now, I always loved the back of the VHS box of Space Jam, because you got Bang over here with the gun. By the way, that's the green Nerdluck's name. The Nerdlucks are the names of the aliens when they're little. You have to be really nerdy to know all that stuff. I don't know if all you know this, but all the Monstars actually have their own names. They were mentioned in the action figures, and if you look at the credits of the movie, they actually list their names, but they don't say their names in the movie. They just always refer to them as the aliens, which I think is a mistake. But anyway, yeah, I'll mention all their names in a different Space Jam related video when I show my Space Jam merchandise from the 90s. I mean, this picture of Bugs Bunny with the basketball, it's really great. What's kind of amusing about the picture is that in the movie, they show that Bugs really isn't good at basketball. I mean, the first moment of the big game, he gets smacked around. If you remember that. But Bugs is cool, you know. So they want to show a picture of Bugs being cool with the basketball, you know. Yeah. I always love this picture also. There you go. I mean, that looks like something you see on a trading card. Yeah. So it's Warner Brothers' best, and I think that they could have made a sequel to Space Jam back in the day. You could have had other celebrities in it. It didn't have to be Michael Jordan. There's so much more going on in Space Jam that's really enjoyable other than Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan was great in it, in my opinion. But, you know, people talk about how, his acting was really dry and bland. He was playing a straight man to the Looney Tunes. He was supposed to be sarcastic and bland. That's the point. So he played it really well for what it was. And his reactions were funny to the Looney Tunes. Like his reaction after Daffy was looking in his ears as the ductor. Doctor, the pun. You don't get it. Anyway, yeah, I just thought this was phenomenal as a kid. The cover was really amazing. I know it took me forever to mention this, but you see the silver coin? You have to be old to really remember this. Back in the day, if you bought the tape, it came with this special silver coin. And a lot of kids used to just like stick it in the sleeve. And that coin's been lost by a lot of people who own the film on tape. But that's a very special coin. It's got stuff on both sides. And yeah, it just goes to show you how big Space Jam was for them to put that in with the tape. I like that they did that because it was like them acknowledging that in their opinion this was special. Other people thought this was special. Another thing about Space Jam is that it's a film you can show anyone. It's for kids, it's for teenagers, it's for adults. There's a lot of adult humor in this film. Seriously. Especially the banter between Larry Bird and Bill Murray on the golf course. And other stuff. Other subtle things. You really can't say this film is just for kids. So it has adult appeal as well. Now, all of us 90s kids grew up with this. And we thought this was the cover. We assumed this was maybe... Later on, we assumed this was the poster. And it is the poster, sort of. Not exactly. If you look at the actual poster for Space Jam before they released the 1997 tape, Michael Jordan's actually holding the rings. He's holding the rings. You see his arm. And I know I'm blocking Daffy's face here. But also on the original poster, you see Daffy's hands sticking out. And on the tape, you never saw that. So I really always thought that, now looking back, it's strange. You know, he's just like standing there. He's like looking at you. He's supposed to be holding the rings against the hand of Bang the Monstar holding the ring. Because the Monstars are going to kick their ass. So Jordan's supposed to be holding the rings, protecting them, holding them back from them, the Monstars. But the poster doesn't show that. I mean the tape, the cover of the tape. Yeah, so go back and look at that original poster and then look at this. It's weird. Yeah, so you may ask why. You may not give a shit, but I'm just joking around. Why is it the hand of Bang, the green Monstar, holding the rings? If you notice in the film, the Nerd Lux, the leader is the orange Monstar, whose name is Pound. But when they become Monstars, when they become giant, the green Monstar kind of acts like the leader of the Monstars. If you look at the Space Jam trading cards, it actually mentions that Bang thinks he's the leader of the Monstars, when it's actually still Pound. So it makes sense that his hand is pulling the rings. And by the way, for all you who don't realize, this is how the deepness of this film, all the thought and passion that went into this film. The rings around the Space Jam logo actually come from the rings that introduce every Looney Tunes cartoon. That's where they come from. So, now you know. So I can talk about Space Jam for hours, for days. And maybe I will in some other videos, but I actually did a fan edit of this film, where I added in deleted scenes back into the movie, and I showed it on a movie projector I have, and showed it in my backyard, on like a big sheet. That was amazing. I have it posted on my SuperPat98 channel. If you look at my PLP Productions, there's a link to a different website. We could actually watch it if you want. And I added new music to it. I remastered it, improved the color a little bit. You know, all the stuff they could have done for the Blu-ray release, the new Blu-ray release, if any of you guys bought that, that they really, I don't know, they did nothing to that. That was just the same release they had for the original Blu-ray release, and they just added a new case, and the case was fucking awesome. But yeah, you know, I think there's something special about Space Jam, and I mean, there's so much more I could say about it, but we do have to move on, unfortunately. But if you haven't seen Space Jam in a long time, give it another watch. For all of you who don't like it now, as adults, maybe you'll like it. Give it a second chance. I think it deserves it. Next, we have James and the Giant Peach. Holy fucking shit. This is an amazing movie, amazing animation. You got that right. And like Casper, this is another film from the 90s that no one talks about anymore. This is really a great movie, and for all of you out there who grew up with abusive relatives or whatever, you can relate to this boy in this movie. And you know, it's made by Disney, and you know, they didn't make a James the Giant Peach ride at Disney World, Disneyland. You won't find James and the Giant Peach merchandise. It's like, I don't know why they abandoned this. I do believe it came from a book. I could be wrong about that. I mean, maybe there was a ride, but I don't remember there being one. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. It's just like, this is such a great movie. You got that right. I mean, people should be talking about this film the way they talk about The Nightmare Before Christmas, and people don't. And I love The Nightmare Before Christmas. But this is, again, it's like Space Jam. It's really something special. Now, by the way, what I want to say is later on, you know, in the early 2000s, they made the 3D movies like Shrek and Monsters, Inc. Those were really, you know, great. Really great movies. But even as a kid, I never wanted that to be the new standard. It's like they completely gave up on animation, or traditional 2D animation. I know this is claymation, which is even more impressive. But, well, you know, in the same realm of being impressive. But 2D animation is like, it just like ended. And we had a cartoon animation boom in the 90s. I think the 90s is the best era for cartoons, because you realize they also aired reruns of the old Looney Tunes and stuff as well in the 90s on TV. So, yeah, it's a shame. I believe the last 2D animated feature that Disney made was like that movie with the cows, Home on the Range, I think its name was. That was like the last one. I think that was in 2005 or some shit. So it's a shame. And then even the quality of the 3D animated movies dipped down intensely. A lot. Really, honestly, after like Shark's Tale and Finding Nemo. Okay, so here we got, in my opinion, a very special tape. Again, no one gives a shit really, except for me. And hopefully other people, you people in the comments, comment if you care like me. Back in the day, getting into Dragon Ball Z was a phenomenal thing. And this is the Arrival VHS tape, which has the first, I think, 3 episodes of the beginning. This is like the very beginning of Dragon Ball Z. And this tape is like amazing. Like, look at the dragon in the background. Those eyes. Yeah. This is just like an amazing way to present the beginning of the greatest 2D animated show, cartoon, anime. And people always say, well, Dragon Ball Z is the greatest fighting anime. No. Dragon Ball Z is the greatest anime, period. Not just the greatest fighting anime. Because it doesn't just have fighting in it. It has other stuff as well, like relationships and all that. Not that it does everything the best, but it really is the closest, I think, to being the best. I think it's the best. Right, Goku? Yeah. Yeah, so this felt like a movie because they combined all the episodes into one. They like edited all the first 3 episodes into one feature. So it felt like a movie. And they presented it like a movie with this tape. This fat tape with the gold. Yeah. So this is a special tape. If you find it's the only Dragon Ball Z release that's in like pure gold. Because it's special. And Dragon Ball Z just became more and more special as the years went on, as the decades went on. So it is very fitting that the beginning of it is pure gold. I mean, the tape is like an analogy for it. The show was pure gold. The beginning of it was the beginning of something gold, something amazing. It's like Goku's doing that Kamehameha against you. It's like you're getting hit with a Dragon Ball Z punch of fun, action, fantastic suspense, and music, and holy fucking shit. Pardon my language. Not really. Lord Slug. I love this movie. I hope you people in the comments love it too. If you don't, that's okay. A lot of people talk about how the movies aren't canon, but if you look at the movies, the Dead Zone is canon, the first Dragon Ball Z movie, because they made the Garlic Jr. saga in the show. But anyway, in this movie, there's a moment where Goku becomes really strong, really super in it, but he's not a Super Saiyan yet. So the events of this movie take place before he became a Super Saiyan, before he went to Namek. That's what they're trying to do in it. And really, it's interesting how they did that. Like King Kai mentions how, he's turning into a Super Saiyan. But this is like an early version of it. You could make an argument that this takes place in timeline somewhere. Maybe. Now, you all remember the Gargoyles, right? Cartoon in the 90s. Doesn't he look like one of the gargoyles? Like the older gargoyle? Like that outfit. And he is like a bat, like a gargoyle. I always thought that when I was a kid. But anyway, in the 90s, they had all these super groups. You got the Turtles. You got Street Sharks. Biker Mice from Mars. Power Rangers. And, it was always like 5 of them. The Gargoyles. The Mighty Ducks cartoon. That's another show people don't talk about anymore. I love those toys. Anyway, I think this is a really great movie. I think it's the best Dragon Ball Z movie. in my opinion. And it is underrated. And the music on the tape, by the way, you see, featuring music from Disturbed and the Deftones. Only the tape version of Lord Slug, the VHS tape, contains these American bands in it as the soundtrack in the movie, which is really nostalgic. Anyone growing up in the early 2000s like me, in the 90s. It's not on the DVD versions, they removed it. So the only way you can have that is if you buy the tape. So, all you HD people, no. You need this. You need the tape. Yeah, this is a really great movie. I love this movie. I remember they made a big action figure of Lord Slug. A big one. I don't think they made a mini one. A smaller one, I mean. A regular one, I mean. Makes sense, you know, put them together. So, oh god, yeah. Fuck yes. The Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, the movie, the original movie. Now, Victor Ivan Ooze was such a memorable, great movie villain. And it's a shame that he never got to be in the show. But actually, the only other time he appeared in the series is in one of the video games for like the Super Nintendo or the Sega Genesis. He's actually a character you can fight in it. So that's surprising. This is another, you know, I rewatched this movie last year and it's not amazing like I thought when I was a kid. That's a shame. But I do think it's a great movie though. I really do. And I love that scene where they gave him the new animals and they're in the jungle and everything. This is a great movie. And that song, Uh-Oh, We're in Trouble, whatever it is, that got stuck in my head when I was a kid. I mean, look at that. There's a funny story he mentioned where he went to the hospital because something was going on with him, the actor. But he didn't have time to take off his makeup. So when he went into the hospital and he had all that makeup on in the wheelchair, people were like, oh my God, what the hell is wrong with him? That's a pretty funny story, right? Anyway, you ooze, you lose. This is a really great movie. Yeah, and I love their outfits in this movie. Like, they made their outfits look better than the show. Like, they weren't just wearing spandex like in the show. They had, like, it was like hard plastic or metal on their outfits, and it looked really awesome. Maybe the new Power Rangers movie that came out a couple of years ago took Power Rangers a little too seriously. In the 90s, everything was very corny. I don't know. The original is not going to be beaten. This is a great 90s movie. Oh my God, this is like one of the best 90s movies. I was just like obsessed with it when I was a child. So while we're here, I might as well show you. Here are my original Power Ranger toys that came in at McDonald's. And these are all the new mechs they got in the movie. I know all your Power Ranger fans know this, but for everyone else who doesn't know, it's cool. They give them all new animals. And people always make fun of the frog. But I like the frog. I think the frog was awesome. It's different. It's really cool. Yeah, they were given to him in this movie. All right. Moving on. Oh, yeah. Wait a minute. One more last thing. Didn't they mention the Gold Ranger at the end of this movie? I think they did. Or something like that. They mentioned 2 other Rangers. But you know what's weird is that we would talk about when we were kids, when this was out, how wouldn't it be cool if there was a Gold Ranger? And it was a little confusing on the cover because, you know, the White Ranger, he's got some gold on him. So, but later on, of course, in Power Ranger Zeo, I think, they had a Gold Ranger, I remember, but he was like gold and black. You know, I want a Gold Ranger to be all gold, not gold and black or gold and white, you know what I mean? Have it all gold. Anyway, Oliver and Company. It is a masterpiece. I think this is a really great Disney movie. No one ever talks about it anymore. This is just like Casper or James and the Giant Peach. For all you remember this movie, leave a comment in the comments. No, anyway, I screwed that up saying that. Yeah, this is a great movie. They didn't do anything with it afterwards. No toys. Maybe they had a little bit of toys, but it's just not talked about, and they didn't do anything with it. No rides, nothing. This is one of the best Disney movies. You got that right. Yeah, Siskel and Ebert knew what they were talking about back in the day. Sometimes, not every time. Um, yeah, it's a really great movie. Why should I worry? Why should I care? Sorry about that. For all you who know that. Hercules, of course. Great movie. One thing I want to point out, you gotta love Pain and Panic. And he is one of the funniest cartoon villains. He's up there with Robotnik and all the other really funny cartoon villains. Like Denzel Crocker and other people. Anyway, Phil is voiced by Danny DeVito. And, really great in the movie. And this film was released in 1997, a year after Space Jam. So I think Disney saw that they used Danny DeVito as the villain voice for Swackhammer in Space Jam. And so Disney wanted to take that idea, and a year later they put Danny DeVito as a voice of one of their characters. I think they took that idea from Warner Brothers, from Space Jam. So, great movie, great animation as well. The art. Man. And they were really catchy, weren't they? So, I did see this in the movie theaters back in the day. Yeah. So, you got The Nightmare Before Christmas. It's a great movie. He's a great character. Great cover. Don't you just love how this tape is black? The others are white and this is black because it's darker, In my opinion, I think it's a Christmas movie and a Halloween movie. It's a movie to watch in that sweet spot in between Halloween and Christmas, leading up to Christmas. This is a great movie. I don't know what else that could be possibly said about it that hasn't been said at this point. It would have been great if they made a sequel to this film. Some people are a little too overprotective of their properties, like Mickey Mouse, for example. It always takes like a million years for them to come out with a new Mickey Mouse thing, cartoon, whatever. Mickey Mouse is a perfect example of being overly protective. Same thing goes with this. It would have been great if they had a sequel and showed them together. Maybe they could have had a child or something and a new villain, whatever. Anyway, and The Corpse Bride was pretty good, but you really wanted something like this again. I mean, you did, but you wanted a sequel to this, Yeah, so Jack the Pumpkin King is one of the greatest. He's a 90s icon, just like Crash Bandicoot and, Casper became a 90s icon. All right, the Black Cauldron. Now, I mean, just without even talking about the movie yet, just look at the shine on this, like the holographic. For those of you who didn't grow up in the 90s, holographic stuff was everywhere. It was on trading cards, it was on posters, it was on stickers, it was everywhere. The holographic stuff that used to be everywhere. That was a big trend back in the 90s on trading cards and all over the place. And it was really cool, and it made it special. And they don't do it anymore, of course. The Black Cauldron is a great movie. A lot of people do talk about this movie, so I won't say it's not. I won't say it's underrated. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. He was a funny character. He was awesome. They were all good. It was darker than the other Disney movies, but still a great movie. Kind of makes sense that they're both together, you know? Yeah. I don't know what this movie is. The Lion King, yeah. The re-releases for this film on video have a different cover, and I think this is the best cover of The Lion King. The original VHS tape cover. You know, like that's perfect. Great movie. It's a shame that it's a ripoff of Kimba the White Lion. Oh boy. But despite that controversy, looking at the film alone, it is a great movie though. Yeah. You know, what hasn't been said about The Lion King? Great movie. It's one of the best of the 90s. You know, people still talk about it. People still watch it to this day. It's one of those things that's hard to forget when it was such a big deal. And there's a lot of undertones in this film. I would say political ones as well. And you'd never think that as a kid. Not that you would even know as a kid. But as a kid, you never even thought that there would be anything very adult like that. Subtle adult things in The Lion King. It just goes to show you how phenomenal this movie is that it's deep. Deeper than you would think. Anyway. Oh, and by the way, there's a new show. It's been on for a long time now, but called The Lion Guard. It has to do with Simba's son. And it's weird that no one talks about it. They didn't make a big deal out of it. It's like a toddler show. And it's weird. It's strange to me. You know, I think that that's an okay idea. The whole thing with the Lion Guard. And that's what should have been a movie in the theaters. Traditional animation, promoted it, the Lion Guard, whatever. Kind of a stupid name. They could have done something else maybe, but whatever. They could have done that. You know, release it theatrically as a cartoon and that would have been huge. But no. Instead, they shoved the remake of The Lion King, the subpar remake, with not as good animation, down everyone's throats instead. Does that make any sense to any of you? And by the way, those remakes they're just freaking there to keep the legacy alive of the originals. The Mulan remake, the Lion King remake, all that stuff. That's the only reason it exists. The Aladdin one. The Aladdin remake was terrible, by the way. Awful. God awful. That's the only reason those films exist. It's not an artistic thing. There's people that work hard on it, yeah, but that's not why it's made. It's made to keep the legacy alive of the originals. And, there's no worry. People aren't forgetting the legacy of the originals. You don't have to do that. Anyway, here's Pinocchio. But by the way, the only reason they did that was because they felt like they were worried that people were going to forget. It was like a marketing gimmick. And they're still doing it. Pinocchio is a great Disney movie. It's a great movie. Good Lord, though, it's super dark. As an adult, you see it through a almost completely different perspective. Yeah, this is a great movie. There's a lot of weird occult stuff in this movie. Yeah, makes you question the man of Walt Disney himself with this kind of film. There's some strangeness in this film. Very strange stuff. Animation-wise, it's a masterpiece. Animation-wise, yeah. Come on. Anyway, the cat, I believe his name was Figaro, if I remember. I hope I didn't fuck that up, but Figaro, you'll notice Figaro gets listed and mentioned as a Mickey Mouse character from time to time. I have no idea what the fuck that's about. Figaro may have been in one Minnie Mouse cartoon or something, but Figaro is not really a Mickey Mouse character. Figaro is a Pinocchio character. If you have an opinion on that, leave something in the comments for me to read, because I don't know why they keep doing that. Anyway, tell me if any of you remember this. Again, the holograph, the gold, right? You know, it looks like this tape. This is the Spirit of Mickey. They released this in 1998. This is a compilation tape, and it's got a lot of old famous Mickey Mouse cartoons in it. And as a kid, I absolutely loved this tape. I thought it was like amazing. So looking back at it, it's good. It's not amazing like I once thought, but I do love this picture right here. All his costumes that he wore over the years. Mickey wore a lot of costumes, so it's very cool. Yeah, I mean, this is a good tape. It's good, but if you look at the animation in the moments in between, they show the classic cartoons where Mickey and the gang are talking to you. It's recycled animation from the old 40s cartoons, which is kind of embarrassing. It's like they didn't even care to like give it new animation. They just like didn't give a shit. They just like recycled that. That was very lazy of them. I mean, maybe that was like it was neat to see that, but I don't know, for all you who remember that, tell me if you noticed that and mention that to me in the comments. We're back at Dinosaur Story. I thought it was a great movie. Again, with the super groups, and they all have different colors. I mean, this is, it's a great movie that no one talks about, probably because it's a Universal movie. Universal is another one that was making all the kids' movies. Cartoon movies back in the 90s. It is a great movie. And it was a little scary as a kid, I gotta tell you. Now, back in the 90s, dinosaurs were a big deal. They were everywhere. You got Jurassic Park, Yoshi. There were those movies where the kids would interact with the dinosaurs, like this one. But there was another one I remember with like Whoopi Goldberg or something. Maybe I'm wrong, but I think it's called something Rex. And maybe it's not with Whoopi Goldberg, but yeah, it's a great movie. I'm not sure what else to say about it, but animation wise, it's also phenomenal. So it goes right with Casper and the other movies I mentioned that no one talks about anymore, like James and the Giant Peach. I think this movie wanted to be a bigger hit than it was, and it's a shame that it wasn't. Disney had such a tight grip, such a tight stranglehold on the animation business. It's like these other companies also made really great cartoon movies as well. They had their own masterpieces, and this was one of them. It wasn't just Disney. This was also great. Oh, god damn. Okay, sorry about that. Bug's Life. Going into the late 90s, of course. I think this is the best Pixar movie. I mean, I love Toy Story and Monsters Inc. I do, and Finding Nemo. I love Toy Story, but I think this is the best one. I mean, this is my favorite, in my opinion. Well, obviously, in my opinion. This is a great movie. The story is really relatable, and it touches every generation. You can say the same thing for Toy Story as well. The animation was phenomenal at the time. And I saw other YouTubers mentioning how the new 3D animation isn't as good as the old 3D animation. I think they're right. It's very subtle and hard to tell. But the old CGI, the older CGI, was actually better looking. I think it was because when they first did CGI, they were trying to make it look like, have the same details that the 2D animation had, but put it in 3D. But then they got very lazy with the 3D later on, where it's like, fuck the details, just put it on with a computer. It's like, well, no, it's ruining it. The voice of Hopper in this film, I believe, is he's that guy that has a bad reputation now, that actor. Kevin Spacey? I could be wrong. Oh, I don't remember. But anyway, this is a great movie. Another film that could have got a sequel. But, you know, when you really think about it more than the other 90s movies, A Bug's Life is a film that really doesn't need a sequel, though. Well, I mean, I shouldn't word it like that. No movie needs a sequel ever. But The Hunchback of Notre Dame. I love this movie. By the way, for all of you who know about the Mandela effect, there's a famous line that everyone knows from The Wizard of Oz where the Wicked Witch of the West, her monkeys are flying away from the castle, and she says, "Fly, my pretties, fly." That is parodied in this film, and now that line is removed from The Wizard of Oz, and it's heard here. That is a parody of the witch saying that line, which is now removed from The Wizard of Oz, so it's very strange. And you can see that right here, you know. By the way, in the 90s, for all you remember, the villain always was above the logo and was always like being all menacing and everything. They did that all the time. Even when it wasn't a Disney movie, you would always see stuff like that. I know we already looked at The Lion King and he was on the bottom of the cover, but that was like kind of reverse of that. They usually had the villain right at the top, holding the logo of the movie. This is a great movie. It's actually, I don't think it's really talked about that much anymore, though. And it has phenomenal songs in it. And it did scare the shit out of me when I was a kid. Not all of it, but it's very dark. But this is a great movie. What's kind of amusing when you think about it is that they're gargoyles, right? And they're like the funny, corny version of the gargoyles from the different version of the gargoyles from the cartoon, The Gargoyles. Kind of interesting, right? It's like they took the corniness of this and they made it badass. And they made the gargoyles. But I loved them, and yeah. The little friends in especially the Disney movies, or all of them really, all the cartoon movies, the friends were always more likable than like the human characters. I mean, you gotta love Quasimodo, but Esmeralda, I believe her name is, she's cool too. Like, the human characters are cool, but the friends are like, they're funnier, and you kind of like them more. Like the animals, the animal friends in Pocahontas, for example, as well. I got my Red Ranger over here, protecting the collection, and now he's fallen. By the way, you guys like my Red Ranger? Pretty cool, huh? I had this since I was a kid. Damn it. Yeah, so the thing is, I was just thinking about this morning, is that when you think about the 90s toys that you grew up with, if you still have them, it's like when you were a kid, you used to think it was amazing. And now that you're an adult, like, you still think you still love it. Like, I still love this stuffed animal of the Red Ranger.
But because you think differently when you're an adult, like there's a charm about it that dissipates, because now as an adult you're like, all you did was think about that it was cool when you were a kid. That's all you thought about. But now as an adult you're thinking, gee, it could have looked better looking. Gee, it could have had better color maybe. You think practically as an adult, and you don't think that way when you're a kid. So you do lose that. You lose that charm of looking at your older possessions. And what I realized what you could do is like pretend. Like look at this and pretend that you were a kid again. And remember, and you might remember what you once felt about this or your other stuff. You know. Anyway, he's like, here they are. So that's the first top shelf of my VHS collection, my childhood VHS collection. I hope you guys liked the video. Please leave a comment, thumbs up, and subscribe if you like what you're seeing. I love talking about stuff, so I can talk my head off. Yeah, so I hope you guys really loved the video. Let me know what you think. What things I could improve, maybe. Thank you all. Make sure to check in for part 2, where I'm going to talk about the next row, and we'll go through all the rows. So, yeah. Thank you all guys so much, especially if you watch this whole video. Thank you. See you all later.